Well, welcome everyone to Growth School. It's really amazing to have you join us today on Growth School and to enjoy the amazing and phenomenal knowledge that will be shared tonight. All right. Thank you so much for joining. I'm delighted. Been some moments of not being on Growth School for a while, and it has been really, really intentional. It has been an amazing moment. And I know as we're getting towards this time of the year, a number of people already are thinking, how will the coming year be? What are the things you can do deliberately in order to be better? And how can you challenge your life in order to take your life from the level it is to a very, very good level that has the potential to change your life? And today we are considering a very, very important topic. Let me put it up. Let me put it up. Let me put it up. King makers. Okay, like a number of people have seen, king makers. Identifying their roles, identifying and harnessing their roles in your destiny. All right, awesome. So that's it here. I'm talking about kingmakers identifying and harnessing their roles in your destiny. Okay. While I'm saying all of this, please, I would be very delighted if you can just let me know where you're joining from. Let me know your name. Let me know where you're joining from. And just to appreciate you, just to be grateful to you for choosing to join tonight, and then to just have an idea of where the various audience um, are joining from. Okay, so just that info would really help. Just do well to drop in the comment section. Let me know where you're joining from, and I'm really, really grateful. I want to appreciate everyone for this year, everyone who have been a very faithful follower of Growth School, and those who have drawn from our knowledge, those who have done well to even share the knowledge with people, who have invited people to come watch Growth School, to come look at this amazing guy and just listen to the things I have to say. The reason why Growth School is moving on outside, yes, God has been the source, God has been the one who led to doing this. And the inspiration has been coming from Him, and also diligence to be able to source for knowledge. And I also want to appreciate you doing well to sit, to follow through Growth School, to listen, to be here back by day in, day out. And to be able to do this, we are really, really delighted. And I also want to encourage that for those who are joining, please, you can do well to share this video. Just share on your WhatsApp status, share in all the groups it belongs to, and invite people to come join Growth School tonight. All right, come and invite them to join Growth School. Hold on a sec. I want to share on some of the communities I belong to. Right. So Kingmaker, this is going to be part one. All right. Right. All right. All right. All right. Okay, so we'll get right into it. Now, recently I started thinking, oh, thank you so much, EMC Popola, joining from Abiodun Ogun State. I hope Abiodun Ogun State is really fine and is cool, and the weather has been very, very favorable. Nice to have you. Thank you, EMC, for joining. EMC has been a very long time follower. I think for a while now. I think I've known her for some years now. Thank you so much, EMC, for joining. Um, Okay, so kingmakers identifying and harnessing their roles in your life. Now, recently I started thinking and taking time to reflect, considering a number of things that have taken place in my life and how I have come to this point right now. Okay, I've not gotten to some phases, but I'm not where I used to be. And the ability to reflect deliberately on some of these things, looking at it now that, oh, people can see it and watch my videos, people can recommend my videos, I can set up webinars and people will come and listen, the ability to get speaking invitations, the ability to stand on platforms, the ability to be able to listen to some sort of premium knowledge, to be able to build understanding over time, the opportunity to gain privilege where people can seek my counsel, where people are willing to receive my value, the ability to write books and sell them or even give them out and have people to gain access to my knowledge. I realized that there were very, very crucial, and key makers who showed up at different instances in my life. Most times, people come out and express things as though everything they became happened because of their own effort, happened because of their own labor, happened because of everything they did and put into it. Even though that is right, notwithstanding, there were people who contributed to making them become whatsoever they become. Wherever you are right now, there are certain people who are key contributions in making you become that person you have become. This is something that is very, very important, and this is something that is very profound. I've found out that in life, no matter the claim that any successful human has in life, they are deliberate kingmakers that made them so. They are deliberate kingmakers that made them so. Thank you, Emmanuel, for joining. They are deliberate kingmakers that made them so. And listen to me, there is no king who is self-made. There is no king who is self-made. And this particular webinar is for people who really want to become kings, those who want to, whether lead in their industry, those who want to leave the level of being amidst the masses and the average, but you want to go into a point of authority in the things and in the quest that you have chosen to be in. You need this webinar. Why? There are a lot of skillful people, there are a lot of talented people, there are a lot of knowledgeable people, they know a lot of things. There are people who have bags of degree, but they will never lead in their field. They will never get to the point whereby people respect and honor their words, and they will not get to a point of becoming key decision makers in their industry. Why? Because they neglect the roles and assignment of kingmakers in their life. Listen, there are people in this life that you cannot fight. Some of them, you can't even bind them. You can do a lot of ritual activities, you can do all of those praying and all of that. As far as God is concerned, He has set them up as kingmakers. Many of them have deliberate covenant with God that no matter how you try, they are the ones who will open the gate to your rising. And if you don't understand the assignments of these individuals in your life, you will pass them at each phase when you should rise, and you will not understand and you'll not be able to discern them. For example, if you are very conversant with the story of the Bible, there was a time that the children of Israel, they started reaching out to Samuel that, oh, they needed a king, that they wanted a king like other nations. Because what God really wanted for them was that God wanted to be their king, and He wanted to be the one that they had direct access to call on, and then to reach out to, and then to say, oh God, you're our helper, God, you're the this. God really wanted to rule over them. But they saw other nations and they realized that these nations had kings. And in a way, their kings ruled over them, decided what they did, which means that most times the masses didn't really have to do much of the thinking. Maybe the king did the thinking and rolled it out. That was how they actually lived. And in actual reality, God did not create man to permit others to think for them. God created man to rule and walk as a king on the earth. And that's why he has the name called the King of Kings, which means He wanted us to operate with a mindset of royalty, a mindset of a kingdom we belong to, and rule in the space where we are kept. But the children of Israel never saw God's mission and destiny for them, and they said they wanted a king. While they were crying and clamoring and saying, oh, they wanted a king, they wanted a king like other people, Samuel, who was the priest, went to God and said, God, look at what these people are saying. God, what do I do? And God said, no problem. Attend to them. They want a king, give them the king. But tell them 1, 2, 3 things. Oh, the king was going to make their children slaves. The king was going to make them serve. The king was going to do all of that. They were going to labor for the king. They were going to take care of the king. And eventually, God decided to answer that prayer. Now, look at how the king came. God never went straight up to pick a king and told him to start ruling. God spoke to a kingmaker. Irrespective of the quality that the man had, he had a physique, maybe even had the intelligence, maybe even had the talent, maybe he could even speak, maybe he could even do all of that. He never got access to the throne except a kingmaker showed up. And who was the kingmaker at that time? The kingmaker was Samuel. The kingmaker at that time was Samuel. God did not speak to Saul, God spoke to Samuel. Many times you can be chosen for greatness, but if the kingmakers do not show up to ordain you or to grant you access to your destiny of greatness, you can still struggle in mediocrity and struggle for a long time because the kingmakers do not show up. Now, going on in the story, how did the first king of Israel, how did they meet this kingmaker called Samuel? Saul, at that time, while he was going with the servants of his father, there was an house that got missing, and they started going looking for the house. They struggled, they could not get the house, they could not even find it. And Saul started looking for a seer. At that time, Samuel was the priest, was also the seer. And they recommended that, oh, there's a seer, oh, go look for him, he will tell you how to find all of that. And while Saul was on that journey, he came in contact with Samuel. The mission of Saul was that he wanted to look for the missing ass. But the mission of Samuel was that God spoke to him that he was going to meet a man. He had this kind of characteristics, and he's the one that you should anoint to become the king. Samuel never spoke to him about the missing ass. Samuel spoke to him about what God has said. Imagine the number of kingmakers that you have walked around in your life, but you have never been able to know them, harness them, or you have not positioned correctly for you to be ordained for that throne. It's not about what you know. It's not about how skillful you are. It's not about how talented you are. It's not about the number of degrees and all of the things you can bring together. Many times you need the kingmakers to show up in your life. So the reason for many struggles, you are trying, you are doing all of this, you are sometimes even pushing out the emails. Maybe you're a business person or you're a skillful person, you're a solo entrepreneur, and you're trying to push out deals, you're trying to beg for platforms, you're trying to beg for these, and you don't have the privilege to. It's probably because the kingmakers have not shown up in your life. If you are very conversant, there are certain cultures in Nigeria or maybe in Africa where even sometimes the person who is a born prince, I get what I'm saying? So when I say born prince, it means the person who was given birth to by a king. So by every means, or maybe by custom, is meant to be the king. Notwithstanding, he may not automatically attain to the throne except the kingmakers agree that he will be the king. That's how powerful kingmakers are. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to even say, oh, that's not the way. Maybe I'm born in the king palace. Maybe I'm born to this. If the kingmakers sit together and say, you cannot, you will not be the king, I'm telling you, no matter what you know, no matter who you know, you will not get to that throne. There are kingmakers that have been set and destined to lift you in life. This is something I want you to get note. I want you to take note of, and I want you to understand. Now, this is the thing. Eventually, Samuel anointed him, and that was how Saul became a king. The issue most times, the problem most times is that many times your kingmakers don't come from your immediate family. Most of the times, your kingmakers are not usually your parents. Some of them are not even your uncles. Some of them are not even your aunties. Many a times, these kingmakers are people who are outside your family. These kingmakers are people who are outside your family. And if you don't understand their roles, you can meet them and miss them. You can meet them and miss them. I've seen people who say, "Oh, me, I'm introverted, though. Anybody that is not a member of my family, I don't want to have anything to do with them. It's just my family people and all of that." I'm telling you, you will continue to stay in that level of thinking, but you will not be able to command great level of results. Of course, there are some that have the privilege that these kingmakers are their parents, and they identify them early and say, "Oh, I'm going to build you to become a king," and they make you ascend to that level. But most of the times, when people identify that you have a grace on your life, and they identify that you have honor on your life, and you have the ability to become great at it, not many people will build you to become it. And that was the mistake that Saul made when David came to him. So Saul knew that David was going to become great. David was going to become a king. David had what it took to become a ruler. And what Saul wanted to do was to use the grace and that greatness in David to his own advantage. So what did he do? After he killed after David killed Goliath, he then told him, "Oh, go to the Philistines and go and to do them." It was the king's responsibility to lead the war. But he saw a greatness in David and he wanted to kill him early. He wanted him to die early, and he put him in front of the battlefield. The issue is, if people recognize the royalty and grace upon your life before you do, most of the time they convert it to their own advantage. But you know what the true kingmakers do? They build you and prepare you for the throne. They build you and prepare you for the throne. One thing I want you to understand is that there's a royalty upon your life. Irrespective of the industry you're operating in, there's a royal grace upon your life. You are meant to be a king. You are meant to command authority in different places. And that's why I love the word of the Bible that says that he has made us kings and priests unto our Lord. That's why you must stop operating like the masses. Your understanding of who you are will determine how you live and how you operate on a daily basis. Okay? How you operate on a daily basis. Now, let me tell you this quick story. I'm going to skip a lot of story. I'm going to start from after my NYSC. 2014, I went for my NYSC. For those who are not in Nigeria, who have not heard of NYSC, NYSC is the National Youth Service Corps. It's a kind of program where everyone who graduates, the BSc or the bachelor's or the HND, okay, what they do is the government posts them to different states in Nigeria. So they go there for a compulsory youth service. So when they go there, they have like a about 2 weeks camping program where they have like orientation, they have different drills, the man o' war, many of those drills. They do orientation for them. It was a really fantastic season for me. And there are also religious activities that take place. There are people who will come, who will teach you skills. People will talk about career. People will talk about the language. People will talk about different places. And after that 2 weeks, they would post you to a local government where you work, to an organization where you work. And that place is usually called your place of primary assignment. And that was NYC for me. So it spans for about a year. After 2 weeks, then maybe about 11 months of 10 to 11 months. And after that, you can choose, maybe you want to be there or you want to return back to your state of residence, depending on what you choose. There are people who have been retained because of that program. It was a system that came up, I think, during the Yakubu Gowon era, where they wanted to bring some sort of peace and unity amongst Nigerians. So people from maybe the south will be sent to serve in the north, east, west, like that. Just a way to bring some sort of harmony amidst the nation. And that was what it was about. So I came back from service year 2015, and when I returned back in 2015, along the line, I was told I was going to start my master's, and then I returned back to Lagos. From Lagos, I went back to Abeokuta to do my master's degree program. During my master's degree program, I was always returning back to Lagos once in a while, and at that time, I had a district church I was attending. Who was the first kingmaker I met? The first kingmaker I met was my district pastor. And this was what happened. Um, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, you see, many times the kingmaker doesn't come from your immediate family. Yeah, there is a royal grace upon your life. Yeah, you need to understand it. There's a royal grace upon your life. So the first person I met was my district pastor. And how did this happen? I just came back from service here and I just got interested with, oh, how could we impact young people? What could I do? And the man just liked me. He just knew that, oh, there was something about this guy. And I was doing what I could do, being involved, helping the youth. And that was how, during that period, he came up with a group of people. These are people who have graduated from school and they are not adult per se, they are sort of young people. And we started something called the Young Professionals Forum in my district then. Now it's a church thing. Now, during that period, all we wanted to do was how could we advance the life of people? How could we ensure that people got better? How could we ensure that people did this? And then my pastor started discussing with me and just spoke on how he wanted me. We just had conversation. Oh, I was going to lead a team to ensure those things happened. The first kingmaker. Your kingmakers sometimes will only give you a chance. They would only offer you the opportunity to move and do the things you want to do. Sometimes you may not even be sure that you can do those things, but they would have you just do it regardless. That was how we started. And this man, I would always go to his house. He would invite me to come speak, would sit, he would share with me, would speak about vision. What could we do? This person want to advance the life of this person, want to transform people in this community. And we took up the challenge. Taking up that challenge, we had a program that was so massive, so successful. It was like, oh, he was very delighted. He was very happy. And on, he started giving me the platform. He would say, come and lead prayer. He would invite me. He would say, oh, come and take this seminar. Or he would say, come, you are the one that is going to do this. He was just giving me assignments to do, giving me assignments to do. In a way, the assignment he gave me, or the assignments he gave me during those periods, they were building me, they were sharpening the leadership capacity in me, they were giving me the ability to communicate with people, they were giving me the ability to impact life, they were giving me the ability to build my people skill. I'm telling you, that for some of you right now, you're attending some churches and you're saying, oh, you want to sharpen your skill, you want to become a public speaker, you want to challenge yourself, you want to hold programs, you want to do things like this person, but your pastor can be your kingmaker. It may be your kingmaker. The platform that it gives you access to may be the leverage to make you see the things you have the ability to do. That's what kingmakers do. Saul never knew he would become a king. Saul never thought it in his least imagination that he would become the king of Israel. But what happened? A kingmaker anointed him and showed him to the people, and that was how he became something of record that Saul became a king. Saul became a king. Why? Because a kingmaker gave him access and platform to do it. I just mentioned that was a kingmaker in my life. Right till this time, we are still in talks. Something this still happened that I still shared with him and did all of that. When we held the second program, this man connected me with one of the speakers who came to speak at that program and spoke so well of me. I saw one of my friends that was saying, this is my boy carries more weight than this is my CV. The reason why many of you right now you're struggling with a lot of things is because you have not identified your kingmakers. There are kingmakers whose voice will transition you into escape velocity opportunities. But you know what? You have missed them. How do you treat your pastor? How do you even deal with your project supervisor in school? How do you deal with maybe even some people that have had impact on your life? Some of you right now, you say, oh, this person is my mentor. But the moment the person strikes you or give you a very difficult task or becomes brutal about you growing and impacting your life and advancing your life, you know what you do? You just switch off and be like, who is this? There are times during the season of my growth, the man corrected me. He told me certain things to do better, certain way to say certain things not to push up on platforms like that. That's how you keep growing. Kingmakers. Possibly the things you are running away from is the reason why you are not getting to where you should. The things you're running away from. Do you know people who, through giving themselves the ability to sing as choirs in church, they have become global ministers in the world today? Look at even some of the people who sing the secular music. Many of them will tell you, I started as a choir in church. Who are your own kingmakers? I didn't just get here because, oh, I was lucky. I didn't just get here because I was good. I got here because people took chances on me. People took chances on me. Who is taking the chance on you? You know, the man was doing all of that. You know, people didn't know. I would just leave my house. I would go to his house. He would share with me. I would take things. I would jot down. I was learning a lot. I was drawing wisdom. I was getting better. I was learning composure. I was understanding the things that were happening. Those are kingmakers. Those are kingmakers. Some of you ran away from your kingmakers. The moment you found out that maybe they were being too hard, they were being too harsh, but you didn't look beyond the things they were saying and the things they were doing, you didn't see into their heart. That was it. When I came back from service here, that platform was setting me up for many things. There were a number of things I did thereafter that was no longer with that group that happened because of the capacity I built during that season. Moving on, I came back during my master's degree program in 2015, up to 2016. I finished in 2017, and during my time as a master's student, I had another pastor in my fellowship. Then, right now, is a state coordinator of the Deeper Life Campus Fellowship in Ogun Central, Professor Adejuigbe. During that period, the man would just saw, okay, I think there's a grace upon the life of this guy. And I would just see him, he would just tell me, prepare to do this. He would just tell me, oh, prepare to do this. Sometimes we would finish a workers' meeting on a Saturday. I would get home in almost at midnight. I would just see his text message, prepare to moderate tomorrow's service. That was happening. That was happening. And I was just taking it in. Sometimes, even as I was leaving workers' meeting, I would just expect that, oh, this man may come. If I wake up at midnight to say, oh, I want to ease myself, I would be checking my phone to be saying, I hope this man did not do this. You know what he was doing? Every time he gave that assignment, it took me into time of preparing and getting ready to deliver. Why? Because I took it as a big deal. And he was giving me that assignment over and over and over and over and over again. That was how I started growing into moderating programs, growing my skill into MCing program. In fact, we went for a wedding in Ibadan, went for a wedding of one of our brother in Ibadan. I didn't know what was going to happen. He was a chairman. He just told me in that program, you are the one that will MC this reception. I was like, okay. And then I just had the outline and I did it, and it was so well, it was so fine. After that period, I've emceed other wedding receptions. Why? A kingmaker took a chance on me. He took a chance on me. And in doing all of those things, I was growing. Sometimes you say, oh, you are the one that will take the side scripture today. So side scripture in my church is like the Sunday school that they do for everyone in church and all of that. We say, you are the one that will you are the one that will take Sunday school today. Side scripture today. Sometimes it may just be, oh, you are the one that will lead prayer. You're the one that will do this. You're doing, all of those things were the work of kingmakers trying to build me into destiny, trying to position me at the point where I will have to start talking to a larger number of people, trying to position me to a point where I would know how to prepare, those periods you will learn how to prepare messages. You'll just, what they do sometimes, we used to have a program where you have a seminar, they'll give you the outline, oh, you are the one that will take the seminar today. Those things were happening. People just trusting you and telling you that take this assignment. And you just prepare, you just do all the things you have to do. You study, you read, you get extra ideas, and then you push it out. And every time you are able to do those things diligently, they see through you and they give you another opportunity. I'm mentioning names. Pastor in Lagos, that's Pastor Luke Jimmy. Pastor in Funab at that time, Pastor Adeju Igbe. These men took chances on me. No matter what I have become today, no matter what people respect and say, oh, that guy, oh, he has a YouTube channel, oh, he's teaching very well. And I'm being able to offer these things, I'm telling the stories, I'm pushing it out to you. You are able to draw knowledge, you're able to draw ideas. It happened because of the work of kingmakers in my life. What are the things you are running away from? Stop running away from the things that will position you into destiny. If Saul never decided that he was going to listen to the instruction of his father to go ahead to look for the house, he may never have met his own kingmaker. The situations that would warrant for meeting your kingmakers may not be pleasant situations. Some of you right now, you're thinking that you'll meet your kingmakers maybe in a very great program, maybe when you attend a conference, maybe when you go for a summit, maybe when you go for a workshop, maybe when you travel abroad, maybe when you do this. The reason why some of them are not listening to you is because you missed the foundational kingmakers that would have prepared you to meet the ones that will lift you, to meet the ones that will build you. He listened to the instruction of his father, and then he went on that assignment and he met a kingmaker. He met a kingmaker. Look at the story of Joseph also. Joseph, his father said, go look for your brother, give them the food, they may be hungry by now. And he obeyed that assignment. He never knew that he was going to go through a journey that would make him meet various kingmakers. He went to Potiphar's house, it was built. He went to the prison. The one who kept charge of the prison made him a leader. Those were kingmakers. And when it was time and preparation to become a prime minister, he became ready. Some of you right now, listen, a lot of people are not ready for kingship. A lot of people are not ready for royalty. A lot of people are not ready to command value at a greater position where the world will respect the things you are saying because you have neglected the foundational kingmakers that should make you in your destiny. You have neglected them, the people that should make you in your destiny. Many of you have privilege for maybe religious associations. Some of you maybe even on your campuses, maybe you're a student, or maybe in your organization, and you are given certain tasks to do, but you just do it. Oh, what's it? What am I really getting from it? You are thinking about money and you are losing royalty. You are thinking about the instant reward, where you are losing the ability to step into your throne. You are losing the ability to be honored by the world. Why? Because of the foundational kingmakers that you have lost in your destiny. Who are the kingmakers that you have neglected? Who are those kingmakers? Who are the people you have looked down on and say, oh, this man does not really look like he has blown. He does not look like, oh, he's living in a mansion. It does not look like he's riding a Jeep. I did see Jeep. When these men were building me, I was not looking at their Jeep. I was not looking at what they have acquired. I was not looking at wherever whatever they've attained or not attained. I was focused on doing the assignment, and while I was doing it, I was being built. At that time in Funab, sometimes I would just get some of my leaders because of the fact that I had the privilege to listen to what that man gave me to do. I did it very well. They'll invite me. Oh, my brother, we're having brothers program. Oh, you are the one that will take the seminar. Oh, sir, we're having this youth program. We want you to come and talk to the youth. And we're doing that. During those periods, there was a time they even I had the privilege to be the what were they called? I think it was exam something. Academic coordinator. I remember now. Academic coordinator. So as the academic coordinator, you are going to be the one that would prepare when the freshers are coming. You organize tutorials. You'll be involved in the Catch Them Young. Sometimes you evaluate students' results. Student results. As students were coming in, you are going to check up on their results. Just ensure that how do we want to improve on them. You prepare topics. We'll have academic talks on Thursdays where we'll teach it out, and then we're doing all of that. It was a process that was building me. Right now, at that time, I never even knew that maybe I would become a lecturer as I am now. I was just doing those things. Right now, I'm a lecturer. I have the privilege to be a level advisor. Many of the things are not new. Why? Because they were kingmakers who gave me the privilege to be built into them. The kingmakers that gave me the privilege to be built into them. Very, very, very important. Your church can be the starting point to preparing for your kingship. You have met many kingmakers. Your choir master can be your kingmaker. Many, 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 many things. Now, let me tell you some things you need to realize. Let me tell you some things you need to realize. As you are journeying towards building relationship with your kingmakers, there are three things I really want you to know. Number one is there are people who, because of the consistency of assignment that these kingmakers are giving you and the level of relationship and interaction you are having with them and your submission to these kingmakers, there are people who will try to despise you before these kingmakers. This is something you must take note. The fact that you know your kingmaker, you have a relationship with them already, does not mean that it will not call for certain level of attack. Oh, I wish you can understand this thing I'm saying. Some people will be surprised at why these kingmakers chose you and it didn't choose them. There are people who will try a lot of gimmicks just to cause some conflict between you and your kingmakers. You know why? Because you're called to fulfilling and doing those assignments, and they are not being called, may call for certain level of envy. And what they will tactically do is that they will try to bring up stories or say certain things about you to your kingmakers so that they will stop their assignment and their roles in your life. And something you must understand is that you should not fight your kingmakers. Even while people try to say, oh, certain stories, oh, say certain things, oh, you see this guy, oh, he's not that this, why do you trust this guy too much? Why is it the one you're giving this assignment? Why is it the one you're doing this? Why is the one you're doing this? It's because they don't understand that they are being used by the enemy to stop your growth into your kingship. Their target is not you. Their target is not even the relationship. Their target is to stop you from rising to your throne. The target is to stop you from going into the palace. From going to the palace. That was exactly what Potiphar's wife did. It was like, oh, why do you like this guy so much? Let's even test the guy. And then she started looking at the guy, she started liking the guy, started doing everything. That she tried so much to ensure that Potiphar, who have always trusted Joseph, looked at Joseph and like, this guy, you did this, and just picked him and took him to the prison. He no longer trusted Joseph. He no longer believed in him. He just brought him into prison. There are people who will try to destroy the relationship between you and your kingmakers. They will try everything. They will go speak about you wrongly to the people who trust you, to some of these kingmakers. It happened to me. There are people who brought certain falsehoods, said certain things, and went to one of these kingmakers and said, oh, you see this guy is trying to do this, is trying to sub this, is trying to take all of your members, and is trying to make them go and do this and do that. But you know what? My integrity stood out for me. Because when one of these kingmaker called me, he said, I know you. And every time they come, I just tell them that I know him. He has a good heart. His intention is good. The reason why he's doing all of this is good. And we just moved on. That is why when you are before your kingmakers, when you have the privilege to meet them, make sure you do not betray their trust. Do you get that? Make sure you do not betray their trust. Because the moment you betray their trust, the moment they find out that you cannot be trusted, the moment they sense disloyalty in you, you know what happens? That relationship is gone. That relationship is gone. You know why? A lot of people don't step into their throne. A lot of people don't rise into destiny. A lot of people don't grow to a point where they command massive value in their life. Is the moment it started happening, the moment they betray the trust of their kingmaker. The moment they betray the trust of their kingmaker. Let me take you back history. Um, Apologies to those who are not maybe Christians and who are not conversant with the Bible. I'll take you back to something in the Bible. There was a time God spoke to Samuel and told Samuel, he gave him an instruction, said, "Oh, Saul, as you're going on, as you're doing all of this right now, as you're going to that nation, kill all of them, don't let anything be remaining." And Saul went, Saul went there, and as he went to that place, he reserved some of the fat sheep and fat cattle and all of that, and came back with some of the people there. And God just entered Samuel and said, "Samuel, the king that you have anointed, this is what he has done. Go and tell him right now, I've revoked him and I've chosen someone else." And Samuel went there and told him and said, "Oh, to be obedient is better than sacrifice," and all of that. And God does not delight in sacrifice, but delights in obedience and just follow instruction. Yet, even if God wanted to anoint another king, which was David, that God was going to replace Saul, David could not become king. David could not be anointed because Samuel was still interceding for Saul. That's how powerful kingmakers are. Never destroy your relationship with kingmakers. When you identify them, when you find them, make sure that you don't lose your connection with them. Sometimes there are friends and people that will come to you and say, "Oh, this man you're even following, this person you're even calling your mentor, this, and that." And they will try to badmouth your mentors. Some of them will try to instigate certain things against them. And you know what they are trying to do? They are trying to stop you from becoming a king. They're trying to stop you from becoming a king. Some of you, your kingmakers are even your parents. Your kingmakers are even your parents. But right now, you're looking at them and saying, "Oh, this man has not blown. This man has not done this." But there are certain precepts, there are certain instructions, there are certain wise words, there are certain things they are teaching you, certain things they are telling you to refrain from. There are certain disciplines they are building in you. There are certain things they are instilling in you, and you are despising them. Why? Because they don't look like your influencer on social media, because they don't look like that person you're always watching on YouTube video, because they don't speak all the big grammar and English that you always listen to, and you despise them. That's why many people don't rise. That's why many people don't rise. Let me tell you the truth. If you have met real adults or elders who are filled with so much wisdom, who have gone through life and they have gone through the struggle of life, they have moved through certain process of life, and right now they are at the top, and you still see them humble, go and trace it back. Many of them were well trained at home, and they had kingmakers as their father or their mother who taught them certain principles that has made them remain how they are, that have kept them humble and well nurtured, even if they are multi-millionaires today. Kingmakers, 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 kingmakers. Look at people like I'm seeing. All right, yeah, thank you, Mr. Thank you, Emmanuel. Yeah, kingmakers, very, very, very important. Kingmakers can change your life. Don't despise them because of how you see them. Many of them may not be king themselves, but they have what it takes to ordain you as a king. There are people who try to destroy the relationships. They'll try to destroy that relationship. They will try to just do certain things and all of that. Let me read something I wrote here. You must never lose track of the fact that you need such men and women or women in your destiny path. People will try to say many things about some of these kingmakers. Oh, your pastor, oh, your leader, oh, your CEO, oh, your manager. Oh, some of those people, they are kingmakers that are sent to your life. Let me give you a secret. For many of you who you are employees and you work under certain leaders, some of them managers, some of them your heads of department, some of them this and this. Try as much as possible. If you really want to rise, if you really want to grow, if you really want to get to the top, try as much as possible not to have issues and problems with these leaders. Try as much as possible not to have problems with these leaders. Let me teach you one top secret. There are people who probably because, let me say, let me say, for example, you are working in a department Y, for example. Then you have a manager who oversees that department, and that's the person you're working with. And then that manager has someone ahead of him. What some people try to do is that they always focus on pleasing this top leader and they don't care about the direct leader they are working with. And many a times, the person who speaks about you, who this man wants to listen to, is a direct leader you're working with. There are people who try to distort your relationship. Maybe for certain reasons, the man gave you a work to do or the woman gave you a work to do and you did it very well. And the person came to a public meeting and say, oh, that guy did so well. I'm so impressed. I'm so amazed with all of that. There are people who will try to go to him. Why? Because they now see that this person is beginning to like you and they will speak wrongly about you to him. What you must do is never to hate those people, but make sure you don't have issues with that direct leader. Because he would watch and vet whatsoever they have said and eventually find out that they have told a lie. That's wisdom. Always make sure that the relationship with your kingmakers remain intact. Number two, don't fight your kingmakers. Don't fight your kingmakers. Don't fight them. Don't fight them. Whenever there's an issue, there's a misunderstanding, always look for a means to feed that gap together. You know, I'm speaking a lot of things, taking real examples. And I know if many of you want to begin to relate some of these things I'm saying with politics, governance, industry, business, and all of that, you get what I'm saying. Don't fight your kingmakers. Don't fight your kingmakers. No matter how high you become, don't fight your kingmakers. Saul neglected an instruction that Samuel gave, and he lost the throne. In his own lifetime, another king was anointed. Don't fight your kingmakers. And that's the wisdom of Samuel. Even while Saul was coming and then he was sending the spear, was trying to kill him, David never fought him. Even when David had the opportunity to kill him, David did not. Never fight your kingmakers. Never fight your kingmakers. Very important. Some of them may even do certain things you don't like. Some of them may even speak in certain ways you don't love. Yet, don't fight your kingmakers. Don't fight your kingmakers. Whether you like it or not, they are the key to ascending to your throne of destiny. Don't fight your kingmakers. That was exactly the mistake that the devil made. That was exactly the mistake the devil made. God gave him the privilege to be like a choir leader. You know, he was leading the people like the story head. He was the one, very nice. He was called beautiful, nice, part of the people, leading the chorus in heavens and you know, the worship and all of that. But one day, he just said, you know, he just became proud and full of himself. And he felt like, who is God self? Like, he can be like God. He started thinking he could be like God. He wanted to be in the place and glory of God. He forgot that his making came from the Almighty. And that was how the devil lost the privilege of staying in a place of dignity, living amidst the angels, being seen as beautiful and mighty, and now we're seen as a terror. Never fight your kingmakers. No matter how you think, no matter how you feel, never fight your kingmakers. Don't fight them. Don't fight them. I'm saying it again, don't fight them. And no matter what you know, no matter what you see, no matter the things that you may even feel like, oh, this, and that, you are not in the place to speak about their weaknesses in the public space. Never fight your kingmakers. Never fight your kingmakers. You have to be careful. If you must step into your throne of destiny, don't fight your kingmakers. Number three thing you have to take note is discern the role of each man in your life. Discern the role of each man in your life, which means that you must not despise anyone. Listen to me, when I talk about kingmakers, I'm not just talking about those who are older than you. Some kingmakers may even be your mates. Some of them may be your age mates. Do you know people who have been set up financially for life by their own classmates? Like just speaking to them, oh, guy, right now I'm just there. I need something to sustain myself financially. I'm not well set up. And some of them will just have that classmate say, oh, come and join me on the island. Come and live with me. I'm going to speak to my boss about you. And that was how many of them got opportunities that changed their life. Some of the kingmakers you will meet may not look like it. And this is why you must discern the roles of every man that comes to your life. Discern the roles of every man that comes to your life. Discern their roles. Some kingmakers, they may not look elderly. They may not have the white hair. They may not even look like it. Yet, they have a role in making you appear like a king that you are. Have you not heard stories of people that it was their friend that promoted their business, that launched them into the realm of millions? That's a kingmaker in a way. And you know what some kingmakers do? They announce the king. They announce the coming of the king. Oh, behold the king. Behold the one who the king loves. They announce it. Some of them will just see your giftings. They will see, oh, your music videos online, and they just pick it up and they start sharing it and sharing it and sharing it. And that's how a lot of people started growing followership, started growing their brands. That's how a number of people even grew to the point where they were being invited for programs. Do you see people who are so intentional about your life, even sometimes more than you? They will just tell someone, oh, you see that guy is so good. If it's this topic, I recommend him. Just give him the opportunity to do it. Those are what kingmakers do. That's what they do. There are people who will pick up their phones and talk to people in their circle. Oh, if there's anyone who you're thinking will talk about social media, if there's anyone you think is going to talk about personal development, if there's anyone you think is going to talk about career growth, they will just speak about you and talk to you in their circle. That's what kingmakers do. That's why you must recognize the role of everyone that comes to your life. Everyone that comes to your life. I've known people who have said, oh, for this particular topic, this is the person I want you to invite. This is the person I want to be there. I've known places that I should not have stood on to speak by the function of my age. But you know what happened? A kingmaker took my name and said, give it to him and let him speak. And when kingmakers give you access to platforms or give you opportunity, make sure you use it well. Make sure you do what? Make sure you use it well. Make sure you use it well. Make sure you use it well. Discern the role of everyone that comes into your life. Just like I said, there are princes who are walking barefooted, while servants are riding on horses. Some princes, they are walking on barefoot, whereas white servants are riding on horses. You know why? Because the prince was never made to be a king, but the servant submitted to a kingmaker and was enthroned as a king. The question is, are you going to be a prince who will walk barefooted, or you are going to become a prince, or maybe even a servant who would ride on an horse, and you begin to command authority? You are going to begin to command influence. You are going to begin to influence massively, and the world will come to you because you were truly made by kingmakers? These are key questions that you need to ask yourself. Maybe in part two, this is going to just be part one of the kingmakers. Part two, which I'm going to take next week, I'll be talking about how you can start harnessing the roles of kingmakers and how you can position correctly to meet your king makers. All right, that's it for tonight. I want to know if there are questions. I'm checking my comment section. I want to know, do we have questions? Do we have questions? Do we have questions? Do we have questions? For tonight, I want to answer your question. I want to answer your question. King makers, identifying and harnessing their roles in your life. Okay, so as a means to wrap up, thank you so much, Abdul Majid Adegun Abdul Razak. Thank you so much for joining. Said I'm enlightened. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining tonight. It's nice to have you. It's nice to have you. So kingmakers, very, very, very important. Now, before I leave, let me just share number one of a way to harness the power of kingmakers. And number one is be sure and deliberate about who you are. Okay? Be sure and deliberate about who you are. There are a number of people who live today confidently in their ignorance. There are a number of people who live today confidently in their ignorance. And this is something you should not be. You will see somebody who goes about life on a daily basis, not knowing who he is, not knowing who she is, who just come and make a claim that I'm going to rule the world. I'm going to command this industry. I'm going to be this. Yes, if people say it, oh, positive words. Why say you are commanding reality? You're doing all of this. But the question is, who exactly is making this statement? From what knowledge and from what knowing of yourself are you making this statement? Are you just making this statement just to appear like you are joining others to say it? Or you come from a point of knowing of who you are? You must be deliberate about knowing who you are. You must understand that you are a king. You are a king. You must understand that you are a king, and there's a way that kings behave. If you show up and just live your life with just, you don't care, oh, there's nothing, you just live like the masses, you just live like the average person, you just go about your life, do everything you do without an awareness that you're a king, you may lose the roles that the kingmaker should accomplish in your life. You know, there's a saying that he that is in honor and knoweth it not is like a beast, or is like something. You know, they just classify him as something that is ordinary. There's a way you need to know who you are. You are a king, and you must live like one. You go out every day, you don't speak the words that other people say. You don't just receive information from anywhere and accept it. You don't go on various social media platforms and just take it, and then you just go about and publicize certain things without knowing that there's a way that kings behave. Kings do not just receive things and act on them. They analyze, they find out, they seek the source, and based on those things, they now decide to respond based on it. And you must know that it's not everything that kings respond to. Maybe next week I'm going to talk about this in more context, because a lot of people, your kingmakers, are folding their hands and they are watching your activities online, and they are shaking their head and saying, this guy will never become a king. And they are saying this guy will not become a king. And there are many who have lost opportunities because they forgot too soon that they have a kingship upon their head. Some of them forgot too soon that they needed to live with a sense of royalty and not just live here and there. You need to know who you are. Why? Because your kingmaker may be watching you in 3D. So let me attend to these questions while we close. Someone is saying, good day, sir, please. When we finally meet a kingmaker, is there a tenure as to when they remain our kingmakers or they are forever our propellants? All right. Now, that depends. So it depends on you majorly. There are some kingmakers that come to your life and they remain your kingmakers for a lifetime. And there are some that come to your life in a season. I get what I'm saying? There are some that show up in your life in a lifetime, and there are some that show up in your life in a season. For example, Potiphar was Joseph's kingmaker in a season. And after a while, when that season needed to change, he met a new kingmaker who was the one who was in charge of the prison, where the king's butler and the wine presser was kept. That was for a season. There are some who your kingmaker will actually be for a lifetime. Okay, for all of the times where you are going to reign, many a times those people remain your kingmaker. Like for example, Samuel remained Saul's kingmaker for the season as long as he remained the king, and after his tenure, he was still the one that was also used to ordain David as the king of Israel. There are some kingmakers you just need to check up and find out. Some of them you may even need to discern them, just discern them. That's why I said discern the roles and activities of people in your life. There are some that should be there for a long time. And there are some that you may also just find out that, oh, maybe this is the season a new kingmaker needs to appear for the next level in which I need to rise into, for the next level of my rulership or the next step of my destiny. But notwithstanding, whether for a lifetime or for a season, never live most times in conflict. Never live in conflict majorly. Try as much as possible to not live, okay, or to not part ways. Now, when I say part ways, I don't mean live forever in conflict. Live in such a way that those kingmakers, when you meet them tomorrow or when they come again in your life, they can still speak highly of you. And something you must always understand is don't just use your kingmakers. I will talk about this next week. That's why you should not mix Growth School next week. So I'll talk about it next week in more context. But some will show up at a time, some will show up for a long time. Then also, sir, when one of our kingmaker dies, do we search for another one or we begin to act in their stead? What should be the next line of action? All right. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for this profound question. I'm trying to think of what example to use right now. Okay, now when a kingmaker dies, like in certain cultures, what they usually do is that, they used to have group of kingmakers. And when a kingmaker dies, they do all of the rites and then they bury them and all of that. Sometimes what they do is they replace that person, whether from the family line or they have certain other measures. If the person does not have a son that can stay in the stead, they shall replace that person to come in. Now, this is the thing. When a kingmaker dies, it does not mean that that is your hand. A number of times, there are always new people who show up, or there are people who your kingmaker have spoken to about you. Okay, so they have spoken about you to them. And many a times, these people will always look at you. Sometimes because you already have someone who is a kingmaker, they may not want to instantly do certain things. And when they want to do certain things, they do it through your kingmaker so that it does not look like they are trying to bridge your loyalty with those people. When your kingmaker dies, a number of people then show up that say, okay, now when this person is no longer there, or I think I can fill in the gap. Many of them can just do that freely. Also, you must understand whether you have what it takes to become a kingmaker. What you can simply do is influence people normally, impact life normally, but being a kingmaker is a big deal. Many a times you need certain ordination to become one. There are people who are just born to be kings. They necessarily don't have to be kingmakers. Saul was never a kingmaker. David was never a kingmaker. Yes, he only spoke to them and he had to call a priest that, oh, this is the person that will rule in my stead. And that was how Solomon became a king. Many kings don't really become kingmakers, but some kings, like if we take it into the industry, for example, they are top leaders in the industry who sincerely want to help and raise other industry giants. So they invest their resources. Sometimes they even fund their projects. And that's what many top founders of banks, of organizations, of oil companies, of a number of those things. That's why they raise up foundations for entrepreneurs. So they give them funds. They also give them trainings so that they can use the funds successfully. Some of you know names like Tony Elumelu Foundation, like Jim Ovia Foundation. I think Dangote also has a foundation. There are a number of those foundations. So what they do is they have an organized program where they train entrepreneurs and then they raise them up so that they can also grow to become giants. They have become kings, and now they have built capacity to also become kingmakers. So that's it for that question, Emmanuel. I hope that answers your question. If there are no other questions, thank you so much, everyone. I'm really grateful. I sincerely appreciate you for joining tonight, and I look forward to coming your way and dishing out more and more value again, same time next week. And please do well. I'll leave the replay of this video so it could be very helpful to other people. Please, what you can do for me is subscribe to this channel, do well to like this video so that it could be recommended to more viewers, and also share the link of this video with your friends. I know you have gotten a lot of value today. Share on all of the groups, WhatsApp group you belong to, share on Facebook, share your WhatsApp status tonight, and invite people to come watch the replay. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you. I celebrate you. See you same time next week. Thank you, Emmanuel. See you next week.